You're listening to episode 43 of Literacy in Color. Today, we're chatting with the Lindsay Kemeny, a dedicated elementary school teacher, speaker, author, and podcast co-host with a passion for literacy and translating research into effective classroom practices. Her journey into the science of reading was deeply personal, sparked by her son's diagnoses of dyslexia and depression. This led her to explore and implement evidence-based literacy instruction to support all learners. She's the author of 7 Mighty Moves, research-backed classroom-tested strategies to ensure K-3 reading success, as well as the newer 7 Mighty Moves reading resources. And now, also, Rock Your Literacy Block, Mighty Moves to organize your day and optimize student learning. It's a step-by-step framework for structuring effective literacy instruction throughout the school day. In today's episode, Lindsay shares insights from her latest book, providing actionable strategies to help educators organize their literacy blocks and enhance student learning outcomes. Welcome to the Literacy in Color podcast. I'm your host, Michelle Sullivan, a science of reading advocate with over a decade of experience as a reading interventionist and literacy coach. I'm passionate about making evidence-based instruction both effective and engaging. If you're interested in captivating our learners on reading fluently and understanding language, or as I like to call it, keeping it colorful, then you've found the right place. Each week, we'll explore intriguing lit bits and practical strategies around the science of reading and structured literacy to help you be colorful and teach colorfully. Are you ready to bring literacy to life? Let's color outside the lines and make an impact together. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Literacy in Color. Today, we're joined by the wonderful Lindsay Kemeny, and many of you are familiar with her as the author of 7 Mighty Moves. She recently came out with 7 Mighty Moves reading resources, an amazing companion guide, and she just released her 3rd book, and it's called Rock Your Literacy Block. So today, we're going to be picking her brain about that. But I also just want to make note that this past October, I saw Lindsay present at the Reading League conference, and we were laughing because she was the very last session on the very last day of the conference and worried nobody's going to come to my session. And it, in fact, was one of my favorite sessions that I've attended out of the entire conference.
Aww.
So just to piggyback off of that, she is an amazing presenter, an amazing educator, obviously an amazing author. So it truly is a pleasure to have her on the show today. So welcome to the show, Lindsay.
Thank you. I'm honored to be here. I loved meeting you at the conference. And yeah, I'm always stressed, and especially when I'm placed in that last slot. I was like, everyone's going home. No one's going to come. And so I was so relieved that the room was full, right?
The room was full, and there was a line out the door afterwards, just everyone wanting to meet you because you just blew everyone away.
It's nice of you.
So can you just briefly share a little bit about your teaching journey and how you became such a trusted voice in the science of reading community?
Yeah. So when I first began teaching, I was teaching 2nd grade. I taught for 5 years, and then I took a break to just stay home with my children. I have 4 kids. And when the youngest one was about in preschool, I returned to the classroom, and I was teaching kindergarten, and I also taught 1st and 2nd grade. But when I went back, my son, he was struggling to learn to read. He's my 3rd child, the first to learn to read rather easily. He was struggling, and he was eventually at the end of 2nd grade diagnosed with dyslexia. And that's just what completely changed everything for me, because I had to really take a hard look at the way I was teaching to determine if it was effective for all students. I went through all these emotions when I found out a lot of things that I had been taught had not been aligned with research. Some had been debunked. So I was really angry as I was learning about the evidence behind good literacy instruction, because I hadn't been taught those things. And so I felt so passionately. I started a blog and I started sharing, because I was like, every teacher deserves to know this information. Every child deserves a teacher who knows this information. And so really that's when people started becoming familiar with my work, because I was writing a blog, not super professional or anything, but I would share it on Twitter. It was Twitter back then, and other people would share it. And Emily Hanford would share some of my posts and then invited me to speak with her. And that's kind of how, I guess, your question, how did you come to be a trusted voice? And I think that's how I just had this very authentic desire and passion to help others as I was making all these changes in my classroom, because of what I saw with my son and how tightly connected his self-esteem and ability to read were. So that's really how it started. And then, Scholastic had seen my blog and they invited me to write a book. So that's just a little bit of the history there.
I love it. And it's such a gift to the world. What I love about the whole Science of Reading and Practice series is they're so digestible and teacher friendly. I have a bookshelf full of books behind me, and some of them are so dense. And I'm reading pages several times over and over, trying to just understand the context and information. And your book and the others in the series are very teacher friendly. And I think it's what's really needed, and how you talked about like every child deserves a teacher who knows this information. And we need these kinds of resources to help them know this information. So thank you for all that you do in that space. I mentioned already you gave us 7 Mighty Moves and these reading resources. And now we have your brand new book, Rock Your Literacy Block. And first of all, congratulations, because I recently just saw on LinkedIn that Dr. Louisa Moats wrote your foreword.
I know.
Like, amazing.
So I just kind of assumed she would say no. And so I'm just thrilled. It's just a huge honor. Words can't even explain how honored I am to have her support. She is such an icon, a legend in the field. So to have her support and her words gracing the pages of my book is just amazing.
I know. And even your first one, you have Anita Archer. And I'm like, oh my gosh, Anita Archer and Louisa Moats, these are my Science of Reading sheroes. And like you said, such icons. So
Yes.
what an amazing stamp of approval on your work. How exciting that is.
So excited. It was just the whole time I was like, pinch me, pinch me. And then when she agreed to it, it's like almost like I couldn't believe it. I didn't want to tell anyone, just in case after reading through the book, she changed her mind or something. So I was like, oh my gosh, I'm not going to believe this until I actually have the foreword in hand. And I'm excited for everyone to read her foreword. It's really nice.
Oh, beautiful. So what inspired you to write this book?
Yeah, okay. So kind of 3 things. First, right after 7 Mighty Moves came out, I was giving a webinar about it. And I can't remember how this started. I think it was in a smaller group because we were having time for discussion and some question and answer. I was describing how, well, in addition to these steps in your lesson, you need to be thinking about transitions and where in the room you are and the other little things happening that you don't always think about. And someone said, yeah, you should write a book about that. And I was like, oh, that's kind of interesting. And so that kind of got the wheels spinning. And then my principal moved me. So I was teaching kindergarten, then I went back to 2nd grade, and then my principal moved me to 1st. And I was really upset at first. I was like, I've never taught 1st grade. I don't know if I can do it. I love 2nd grade. And so what I did was reach out to other teachers in my school district who were 1st grade teachers who I knew were good teachers, like teachers I admired. And I reached out and I said, hey, can I come to your classroom after school on Friday? Can you walk me through your block and tell me what you do? And so I visited 3 or 4 different 1st grade teachers. And that was so helpful. Just listening to them tell me how they organize their day and walk me through it briefly. I was thinking, why have I never done this before? Any grade level I go to, I want to do that because it was so valuable. And so that's what I was thinking, like with this book, I want to do that. I want to walk teachers through my block. And the point is not that you have to make your literacy block look exactly like mine. Just because when I went to those teachers, I got their ideas, then I considered, and then I created mine and decided how my block would look. So it's the same thing. And I say that several times in the book. I'm like, you don't have to look exactly like me, but I want you to start thinking about, I want to inspire you to come up with your own good ideas and to figure out how you could improve your literacy block. And then the third thing is just I gave a live webinar. It was a live event is what it's called for the Reading League several years ago. It was called Rock Your Literacy Block. And so I already had that name in mind. And in that presentation, I basically walk teachers through my block. So, and it was several years ago, so it's different now. So I could kind of get that presentation off, dust it off, consider it, think about all the things I've learned. And it was seriously the most fun book to write because I'm just describing what I do every day. And I think that's really special because it's so important to listen to the researchers and different experts out there, but it's a whole nother thing to apply it to your classroom. And it's totally different sharing something you've learned about, sharing something you're doing. That's in this book. I'm sharing what I do every day in my classroom.
I love that. And I love the little adage that it doesn't have to look exactly the way I do it. And I think a lot of times teachers will learn something about the science of reading research and kind of pigeonhole themselves into thinking things can only be applied this one way. And this is the right way. And that's not necessarily the case. There can be a lot of different application pieces. And it's just a matter of finding what works with your groove while still holding true to what the research says and what the evidence supports. So I'm so excited to read through it. I can't wait until my copy comes.
Yes. Well, and what you just said about your groove, I actually have a section in each chapter called Finding Your Groove. I kind of had a little bit of fun with the whole Rock Your Literacy Block theme, where I'm sharing my schedule and the amount of minutes I spend on each part and how that schedule might look across the week. And it is about finding your groove, right? Because the way your school setup is, your students, everything, it might be different than mine.
Yeah. I love that I tapped right into your little play on words there. How fun. I think it's so helpful too to share about minutes and stuff because again, people want just a rough idea. What does this look like and how? And a while back, I interviewed Dr. Stephanie Stoller about MTSS. And one of the takeaways from that is sometimes the minutes in your literacy block will differ from class to class and from school year to school year, depending on your data. And so again, we can get these rough ideas, but it doesn't mean it has to be precisely this way. You're responsive to the students in front of you. So
absolutely
love this little takeaway. So we're going to get a little philosophical now. And just why do you think it's important to have a well-structured literacy block?
Well, it's all about what's best for the students and raising those learning outcomes, right? And we know time is the most precious commodity. We need to have a plan. So we need to have a good plan in place, a schedule. But even more important is how we use those minutes. And so I really want teachers to start thinking about that because the amount of minutes we plan for, like you might say, okay, I have 30 minutes for a phonics lesson, but the actual minutes students are engaged in tasks that lead to learning might be very different because everything eats up our time. Announcements come on. The marker we have is dead. We can't find our lesson manual. Someone from the office stops by with an announcement, or we're setting up the technology. A student has to go to the bathroom, a fly comes into the room, or, whatever. All those things add up. And then suddenly students aren't getting that allotted time. And so we really have to learn how to maximize the time. So yes, we have to think about the schedule, but then you have to think about how you're using those minutes. And on top of that, teachers need a really clear understanding of reading and writing development. So we need those structured lessons. We need to understand the steps as teachers and why they're important. On top of that, we need to know those elements of explicit instruction that Anita Archer talks about, those high response opportunities, your pacing, your routines, your transitions. I mean, there is so much going on to be a teacher. I think we underestimate how important it is. But the level of knowledge, both knowledge and practical knowledge that a teacher has to have is huge and just makes a world of difference because bottom line, it's all about raising student outcomes.
Yeah, that's really powerful. We think about too, sometimes people will say, oh, we have 60 minutes for literacy or 90 minutes for literacy, but what does that actually look like? And how are you breaking those minutes up? And in the district I used to work at, we did split it up and say, you have 20 minutes for phonics and 15 minutes for vocabulary and 20 minutes for read aloud and those kinds of things, but not every school does. And even so, like you said, there are so many interruptions and just little things because you're working with tiny humans that it's just inevitable to have those blips in your day. But there are these must-have components that make a literacy block more powerful and more effective to raise those student outcomes. So without giving your whole book away, what are some of the must-haves that we should be including in our literacy block?
I'm not going to give the whole book away. There's a lot of detail in the book because, like I said, I am walking you through the block, sharing exactly what I do and what I'm thinking about. So major components in my block, my phonics lesson, what I call my close reading lesson, writing lesson, my small group time. And then, of course, there is read aloud, which I separate from my close reading. And I kind of explain that in the book. Those are the big components right there.
There we go. And they all align with those big five too.
Yes.
So how do your original 7 Mighty Moves tie into this book? Do you see this kind of like as an extension of your first book?
Yeah. So for teachers that don't know, the 7 Mighty Moves are the moves or changes I made in my classroom after learning about evidence-based literacy instructions, which basically was instigated once my son was diagnosed with dyslexia and I had to take this deep dive into literacy. So this book is a little different because now I'm just showing how I put all those moves together. And in each of my chapters, it's basically going through a section of the day. And in each one, you'll see at the beginning of the chapter, I have a little called spotlight on phonics, spotlight on close reading. And I give a quick little, like a little elevator pitch of what we do in this part of the lesson. And then I share the dominant moves. So you will see from 7 Mighty Moves in this section of my literacy block, here are the dominant moves that we're working on. So it's different. The way it's structured is a little different. I hope readers will really see how well the books complement each other.
I bet when I read it, I'm going to have both of them in front of me and reading the Rock Your Literacy block and then going back and cross-checking with the first book and have a little interactive reading session there.
Yes, for sure.
So I read in the book description that you're even including planning tools and management tips and sample schedules. So what's one of your favorite maybe aha strategies or tools that you think teachers are going to find really helpful to make their literacy block more efficient?
So a huge one, and if you're a Dr. Archer fan, then you'll know this, but is to increase the opportunities for students to respond. That is a really important strategy that is so easy. It doesn't require any planning. Well, maybe you need to be thinking about that and you're going to get better at it the more you do it, but just giving students more opportunities to respond, either verbally or written or physically, that keeps them engaged. So that is huge. Additionally, having those consistent routines. And so I share the routines I do throughout the day. Consistent routines are huge. Don't underestimate those either, because it's so helpful when students don't have to think about, wait, what do I need? Where am I going? What are we doing now? They can just focus on what they're doing. We have a very predictable structure or routine in the lesson, and those transitions, thinking about the transitions from one part to the next, huge too.
Well, I'm excited for that. I think the part about eliciting more student responses is going to be really helpful. And I think about that all the time because sometimes when we think direct instruction, we think just teacher lecturing at a class and students are going to be just getting this information in their brains. But we really need to have them fully engaged in the lesson. And like you said, whether it's written or whether it's just oral, they need to be talking back at us. And the primary classroom should never be silent. And I know some teachers do like a quiet classroom, but there is a way to have this productive conversation that it's like a joyful noise, right? Like we want them engaged in the learning process because that's what's going to make the learning stick. So that's going to be really, really helpful.
Oh, we need them talking. Oral language is everything. And especially in my writing lessons, I'm super excited for everyone to read my writing chapter. But all the time with students, before we're writing, we are talking and discussing. And I'll say to them, you have to say it in order to be able to write it. If you can't say it, you can't write it. You need that. Oral language is just the foundation. And I think I've become more and more aware of that over the years. And especially you'll see when you have a student who has a language disability, you see how much that impacts their reading and writing. It just really shows how language is the foundation for all of this. So we need to be giving our students lots of time to engage in discussion. Those can be scaffolded. We can help them. But yeah, I love what you're saying.
Yeah, I feel like even as the science of reading became such a buzz in recent years, there's been such a heavy focus on the bottom half of the rope and word recognition, and rightfully so, because that's an area where a lot of teachers were struggling. And I think oral language is really coming to the forefront of a lot of conversations now. And it's a big one. It's a big one to have because it's so involved. And I think that's going to be a really fantastic chapter to read through and get more information on.
And you'll see that in this book because Dr. Motes and Carol Tolman, in their letters training, they said in lower grades, it should be half and half. Half the time is spent on those foundational skills, so those lower strands of Scarborough's rope, and the other half on the upper strands. And you will see that in my book. You'll see how much time I spend. And even in the first chapter, I take the simple view of reading and I just show underneath it, here's the components of my block, and here are how many minutes I spend on each one.
I love how you said that they have this equal importance too, because a lot of people will think we develop this first and then that next, and really it should be simultaneous, building at the same time. And look at how much language is even birthed to 5 before students even enter school.
Yeah, huge. Yeah, we have got to be talking to them, reading to them, because when you're reading aloud to them, they're hearing more advanced language in their day-to-day conversations. So that is huge. And then just to clarify, as you go up the grades, those foundational skills, there's less and less time on those, right? All the language comprehension is increasing. Of course, that's going to vary depending on the needs of your students. Like you brought up earlier, the first thing you've got to do when you are planning your block is to look at your data to determine what your students need.
Yeah, 100%. While we're talking about time, I know that pacing is something that a lot of teachers wrestle with. You mentioned in the beginning, time is always the enemy, and it just feels like there's never enough time in the day, and there's always too much content to cover.
Yeah.
So how do you approach pacing out your block? How do you make sure that everything gets the time that it needs without feeling rushed or without certain components feeling neglected?
Yeah, pacing is huge. And I know time is so hard. There's always more you can do. And sometimes you're sitting in a training and you're like, okay, I have time for that. Like, show me how I'm supposed to fit that in my schedule. It's so hard. So pacing is such an art. It really is an art. If you are too slow in your pacing, students are going to get off task. They're going to be bored. They're going to be unengaged. If you're too fast, though, kids are scrambling to catch up and you're moving too quickly for them. So this really comes with practice and being keenly aware of your students. You need to be aware of everyone in the room, and you've got to keep them moving along at a quick pace. If you came into my classroom and watched my phonics lessons, phonics lesson is probably the most structured part of my day. And you will really see I have this quick pace, but the students keep up with me. It's not too fast, but it is brisk. So really, I think how I improved in this area is because when I taught kindergarten, I taught half day kindergarten. I mean, you have to have a fast pace. I really as frustrating as it was to teach half day kindergarten and try to get everything done by lunch, it really helped me become good at making the most of every minute, bell to bell teaching. So I am grateful for that opportunity. But yeah, it's just that's going to come with time, with practice, and really being aware of the others in the room.
That's really helpful. And I'm thinking we paid homage to Anita Archer before, but she has that Archerism to keep a perky pace.
Yes.
And I love that. And especially, I was a literacy coach. And one of the things sometimes I would help teachers with is to improve on their pacing of their lessons. And one strategy we did was take a time inventory. And this was teacher led. Can you take an inventory of how much time am I wasting? And what are some things that maybe I can cut out or get better at to get just more efficient? Because it's not always about being faster, just being more efficient and more cognizant of the time that you're using. Because you mentioned in the beginning, we have all of those things happening in our classroom all the time.
Yeah. And another thing is just you can time yourself. And I did that. In fact, when I was writing the book, because I wanted to give teachers times and I was thinking, okay, I think I spend about this many minutes as my guesstimate. Then I would go and time myself to see how much time I actually spent. So even just timing, and if you really want to get fancy, recording yourself in your classroom is huge too. You don't have to show it to anybody, but watching it back, you will learn areas, places where you can
trim the fat.
Yeah. Things you can trim up, things you can do better. Sometimes you're like, oh my gosh, I had no idea those students were doing that back there. It helps you be more aware.
Definitely. And I think it's really helpful to have that recording too, to look back on and reflect. So do you have any tips on balancing whole group instruction versus small group instruction?
Yeah, there's a lot of different ways this can look. I share in the book what I prefer and what I do. And again, if you do it a little differently and it's working for you, that is wonderful, right? We're always looking at our data, and you're never going to let a person like me dictate your schedule or anyone. You're going to let your class needs dictate the schedule and how you're doing whole group and small group. So I take my whole group very seriously. Most of my instruction is in the whole group, and I can differentiate within that whole group. And then I love my small group. And that is when I get to really differentiate and really give students exactly what they need, because our students all need varying amounts of practice, and some are going to need a lot more than others. So I have a whole chapter on small group because I divide my students up where I have different focuses. So I might have a group working on alphabet knowledge. I have a group focused on decoding. I have a group focused on fluency. I have a group focused on comprehension, where we're building background knowledge and vocabulary and using our strategies to extract meaning. So I have different purposes for different groups, and I explain that. And then I explain what I have the other students doing. Because if you're lucky, you have a whole team that comes in and takes all your kids at one time doing your small group. But if you're not set up that way, then what do you do? And I'm not set up that way. So I explain what I have the other students doing. And then I really hope that this chapter does not give teachers a headache, because I really go into detail. This is okay. Here's one variation of how I could do this. Oh, here's another variation, and this is exactly how I do it. And I'm explaining all of the little schedules. And I was like, I hope people see that's helpful. I'm just trying to give options and different ways this could look. So anyway, I love small group. It's one of my favorite parts of the day. The problem is I say that all the time. I really do love everything, but I do really love my small group time.
I love small group too. And sometimes I would hear a buzz, small groups are not necessary anymore and everything should be whole group instruction. I'm like, but small groups are so special.
Yeah. Yeah, and the amount of scaffolding, in fact, that some students require in order to read, it's a lot of scaffolding. And if you have all the students in whole group all the time, and you have multiple students that need that level of scaffolding, that is so difficult to do in whole group. So that's why I need my small group, so I can give them that scaffolding where I am helping them through each of those little CBC words until they're better at it. But yeah, I think small group is really important, especially in the younger grades.
100%. And I love options. So I think options are fabulous. And again, it gives people more of a global view of how to view their literacy block and how to structure their literacy block, because it doesn't have to just be structured this one way. You could do your small groups this way too. So
Right.
I think it's going to be great. And for the teacher who is maybe unhappy with their current literacy block or overwhelmed even thinking about restructuring things, do you have one small but mighty move that they could get started with?
So in the book, I have ROCK as an acronym. Okay. And the K, I want to share that. The K is keep your focus on progress, not perfection. And I'm talking about both in your teaching and in your students, right? So keep your focus on progress, not perfection. And with that, we are all at different places on our learning journey. We are always learning. We're always growing. We need to give grace to ourselves and to others, okay? Because we're coming at this at different points. And so at the end of each chapter, if you have 7 mighty moves, at the end of each chapter, I did a keep, stop, start, right? What to keep doing, what to stop doing, what to start doing. Well, in this book, I do good, better, best. And I explain, hey, in this part of the lesson, it's good if you're doing this. It's better if it's like this. It's best if it's like this. Okay. And we're on a continuum here. So there might be areas where you're like, well, I'm good right here. I'm working towards better, or, I'm better working towards best. In fact, I won't give it away, but one of the sections of the block, I said, for right now, I'm good to be somewhere in between good and better at this part of the day, but I'm going to still share with you what's best. Okay. So I'm very honest. But just keep that in mind. We all have room for improvement. We're not going to be perfect right away, and just make steps, make a goal every year, do something. Like I feel like I get better at teaching every year. And yes, I'm still in the classroom. I love it. And I love that I can choose things to focus on each year just to improve. So just take it one step at a time.
Lindsay Kemeny, come in with the tissues. Keep your focus on the progress, not the perfection. So I know a lot of us need to hear that message, because it can get overwhelming. And especially every teacher who's in this profession, they want to do right by kids, and they want to be the best teacher out there, and they want to see their kids grow. And sometimes it can feel so frustrating when your systems are not perfect or one lesson falls flat. But to make those little goals, I think, is really important and special. And I love that you gave, it's like a teacher rubric where you can self-assess and self-reflect and make professional goals for yourself, and saying, I just want to get a little bit better. I don't have to go from good to best.
Right.
Little steps, baby steps.
Exactly.
So this has been so wonderful. It was such a joy to chat with you. We are definitely going to stick the link for the book in the show notes. I hope everyone snags a copy of Rock Your Literacy Block. And if you don't have 7 Mighty Moves and the other reading resources, be sure to snag those too. Lindsay Kemeny is just one of my favorite people in the whole science of reading community.
Oh my goodness.
Everything that she puts out there really is top notch. And it has been really wonderful chatting with you today. And I'm sure if listeners aren't connected with you yet, they would love to. So where can they find you?
Yeah, I'm on social media. I'm on Facebook. I have a page, Teaching with Lindsay Kemeny. So look for that page. On Instagram, I'm just at Lindsay Kemeny, same with on X and LinkedIn. So I'd love to connect with you guys.
Awesome. Well, thank you again so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much for tuning into Literacy in Color. I hope today's episode left you feeling both inspired and equipped with something new to add to your teaching toolkit. If you're enjoying this podcast, it would truly mean so much to me if you'd leave a 5-star review. It helps other educators find the show and join our colorful community. And don't forget to hit the follow or subscribe button so you never miss an episode. For more tips, tools, and resources, be sure to check out the links in the show notes at michelleandthecolorfulclassroom.com. Thanks again for listening, and I'll catch you next week. Until then, be colorful and teach colorfully.